Brace yourself.
So imagine you're playing a game like The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. You're wandering the snowy landscapes, interacting with NPCs, and just having a great time. You're moving across these elegant paths, but there's a notable method to your progression. You're having fun and staying engaged with the game's world, but you're ignoring almost every side quest. You're constantly progressing solely in the main storyline, sparing very little time or energy on side content or even general exploring. Imagine that you're doing this with a friend watching, or even streaming it on Twitch. In some cases, your friend or viewers might lay down that phrase, one that casts a shadow of judgment on how you're playing. Dude, you're playing it wrong. This isn't an uncommon claim from anybody, whether you're a longtime gaming enthusiast or a casual player fresh into the action. It's been heard for many different kinds of games, from so many genres, but it always seems to circulate around that one idea of playing it wrong. So what exactly do we mean when we say you're playing it wrong? That's something I kind of want to explore a bit in this video. I've been told the very claim myself that my method of interacting with the game just isn't compatible with whatever standard the game appears to structure. I've been told that I've been playing it wrong. So to get things started, I'm going to confront the elephant in the room right off the bat. There really is no wrong way to play a game. Really, if it's possible to initiate an action in the game, then it's correct, and I'm using very generous air quotes. But I don't want to end the discussion right there, because I want to understand the mentality behind the claim itself. Why do we say you're playing it wrong? What about a game conditions us to play it in a certain way with certain patterns of interaction? Is it the developer? The culture? What is it? Really, there's so much more to dig up beyond the surface of this topic. So let's dive right in. From what I've noticed, video games are the only medium that you can interact with incorrectly. Once again, air quotes here. You never hear someone say that you're reading a book wrong or watching a movie wrong. I mean, if you want to get postmodern, you can read a book backwards, starting at the last page, or watch a movie's scenes out of order, but that kind of thinking pales in frequency to how often playing games is judged. There's always more going on in games, so many paths and progression styles to address, so things are inherently more complex than simply watching a movie. There are so many outlets that we're naturally driven towards, so it's bound to occur that we deliver them in some kind of arbitrary hierarchy. But I think this is one of the game medium's greatest strengths. It has that complexity. So many elements are combined to make a game, so many systems and mechanics need to be implemented in order for its design to operate, even in the simplest of titles. And as games become more complex, the number of ways to play them has grown exponentially. And it's getting to a point where a developer's efforts to compensate for such varied playstyles have become incredibly demanding. Between bug testing and even creating new design archetypes, developers are becoming all the more aware that there are so many right ways to play. Keeping track of every potential action a player can make is an ordeal in and of itself, so I'm very much aware of the lengths developers must take in order to cover every base. A single change in design direction can change expectations and ingrained behavior. It's always a balancing act. At the same time, there are templates in the form of video game genres. Genres all have connotations to them. RPGs demand growth and progression in statistics, action games need responsive movement and exciting combat, puzzle games require depth in their challenges along with valuable rewards. Every genre has some identity tied to it. Very rarely do modern games break out of those archetypes, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Familiar elements give us comfort and let us settle into a game's design naturally. A game doesn't need to innovate to be compelling. Sometimes sticking to a template can be the best possible option, and that familiarity can mutate into certain genres being expected to play a specific way. For example, it's naturally disrupting for a platformer to lack any kind of jump button. We've grown to expect them to include lots of jumping, and I think that these expectations have colored what we consider the right way to play. In a platformer, the right way to play is to press a button to jump. Yet games like Bionic Commando exist. I think it's very interesting when these types of expectations are subverted, when a game takes what we're comfortable with and does something outright unexpected with it. These techniques that have become ingrained into the gaming ecosystem are shoved aside in favor of something unusual, but ultimately beneficial to the game's design. For example, Pyre taught me to avoid getting attached to the characters in my team, as they might leave in the game's rites ceremonies. It taught me to go against the traditions of RPGs, where my team is meant to stay synergized and united to take on stronger challenges in the future. Pyre was built around these tough decisions, basically showing that the right way, investing time and sentiment into a select character, was not something I should do. The game's right way was entirely different than what I was used to. On the other hand, while developers are growing to make shocking and disrupting titles that challenge expectations, this level of gamer involvement in breaking down templates and basic structures has made it pretty challenging for a developer to design a game. There always needs to be a skeleton of mechanics and systems in order for a game to function. You can't have everything in a game. So developers need to decide what kind of game they want to make, what kinds of directions are needed, and what kind of behavior they encourage a player to do to fully validate these directions. Whether or not a genre's established features are what guide the design, game developers are always challenged to guide player behavior. This can be done by distributing rewards for specific actions, creating visual elements to lead a player to a particular part of a level, or doing something more concrete, like preventing progression until certain conditions are met. But games are a living medium. The role of the player is essential for a game to be a game. It needs a pilot in order to fly, so to speak. When the player's choices and actions become a part of the game's operation, things can change, and game developers must compensate for the player's actions with various design directions. Sometimes the player can do something that the developer didn't even predict, like exploiting a bug or glitch in a game. In fact, these unusual techniques have become the cornerstone for speedruns, which disrupt the general course of gameplay using glitches or other unorthodox methods of progression. Since gaming's earliest years, speedruns have been embraced by the community, and even developers themselves, as some games even include modes dedicated to speedruns. So with both developers and gamers actively seeking agency by establishing a game's correct form of play, there's always a level of tension. A developer can make a game a certain way, but the player is not obligated to play it that way. This was a contentious point with Super Smash Bros. Melee, where the game was unexpectedly embraced by the competitive scene, despite director Masahiro Sakurai's desire to make the game more accessible to less competitive circles. As a result, the follow-up Super Smash Bros. Brawl was tepidly received by the tournament scene, even giving life to the Project M mod, which took Brawl characters and refit them to play as they would in Melee's gameplay framework. It seemed like a pretty heavy-handed approach, but Sakurai was unintentionally supporting a specific type of play with Melee, and it led to quite a bit of backlash when the tournament demographic was not being supported as intensely with Super Smash Bros. Brawl. While Sakurai never considered playing Melee competitively to be the wrong way to play, it's clear that he wanted Super Smash Bros. To occupy a certain sect of video games. Despite the reception after Brawl's release, Sakurai held deliberation in how it was designed. But sometimes subverting that deliberation can lead to something entirely new, even when not in the hands of developers. When given the opportunity, the gaming community can end up flourishing after going against a series' innate design directions. For example, Pokemon has always been about catching them all, finding every single Pokemon and building up your team for battling other NPC trainers or other players in multiplayer. The concept of collecting every Pokemon has been a part of the series' DNA for more than 20 years, so it's very interesting that one of the most popular game styles came from the exact opposite of that. The Nuzlocke Challenge is a set of rules where a number of Pokemon you can catch is very limited, along with the restriction of releasing a Pokemon if it ever faints, delivering a type of permadeath element to the basic gameplay. Nuzlocke runs have become one of the most popular alternative game types for Pokemon, giving players an entirely new perspective for gameplay, and forcing the player to battle and grow their team more conscientiously. It played against almost every single standard that the Pokemon games established, even in their earliest incarnations. But whether it shows the versatility of its RPG mechanics, or simply the creativity of its fans, the Nuzlocke run has become wildly popular and one of the biggest combatants to the original Pokemon game's mantra. I've also noticed various communities embrace alternate playstyles, always seeking to find a new way to approach a game that might not be apparent to a first-time player. All memes aside, I have to applaud the Soulsborne community. They're always discovering some new trick to progress or some alternate build that requires a significant change in player behavior for progression. A different weapon, some different stat arrangement, there's always some new way to play Dark Souls or Bloodborne. And it's given the community a lot of publicity simply in their diligence to wring every bit of enjoyment out of a series that's approaching its 10-year birthday. It's still a series with omnipresence, and I think a major contribution to that is the community's level of enthusiasm for taking established gameplay templates and contorting them into something wildly unique. So, as I said at the start, there really is no wrong way to play a game. If you can make it happen in the game, that's all the qualifications you need for it to be right. But games encode various mindsets to us via their design. There are standards and expectations we have across the many genres, and we use them to shape our perception of what kind of behavior is acceptable or effective to us when playing a game. Developer direction is a big part of what we can or even should do in a game. But even so, that can be overtaken simply by creative or diligent players. There's a level of excitement in being able to try something new in-game, where we can color outside the lines and initiate actions that might be contradictory to those expectations. I'm not saying that the most common method of playing a game is the best or worst, because that's simply impossible to coherently argue. But I do think that claiming a right or wrong way to play a game hinders the potential enjoyment of the game itself. In the tumultuous relationship between the game creator and the game players, things can get unpredictable, but it rarely results in a game that only limits actions to the right way. Play the game your way, but don't be afraid to mix things up. There's a lot to see.